Hi everyone, I'm Jen Kim, the professor for creative design and compositing. Welcome to week 2 of this class. This week, we're going to delve right into Photoshop. And in Photoshop, I'm going to show you how to use the following tools: masking tool, color correction, retouching, and making selections. And I've decided that the easiest way to show you how to use this is to actually create something together. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this poster together, and the homework for you is to create this exact same poster. So if you watch this video carefully, then you'll be able to get a perfect score this week on the homework. So let's delve right in. The first thing I want you to do is open up Photoshop and click on Create New. So we're going to create a poster that is 8.5 by 11 inches. And one thing that is really important to look at is the resolution size. So if you're creating something for print, which means you're going to print it out, it should always be 300 pixels per inch. However, if you create something for web, which is for a website maybe, or maybe for something for social media, then it can be 72 pixels per inch. So our poster that we create, I'll make it so that it's just for web, so keep it at 72. And for the color mode, RGB works great. So I'll click on Create. So this is my artboard, as you probably know. And so let's take a look at the poster again. So when I create something on Photoshop, what I like to do is sometimes I like to kind of look at it as different layers. As you can see, the girl is on one layer, the ginkgo leaves are on another layer, there's shapes, and there's also this flower, this wavy line, which is another layer, and the one that's on the furthest back is obviously this landscape photograph. So in order to import files into here, what I usually do is I open the folder that has all the files that I need. I'll give you all these assets, and then I click and drag them, and I just drop it in like this. So they come in one by one. So the good thing about this is when they come in, you can adjust the size as you want it. Like this. Okay. This looks a little big, so I'm going to make it a little smaller. And the girl looks a little small, so I'll just make it a little bit bigger for now. So there we go. And now what I want you to see is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all the top layers by clicking and dragging down. And that will give me the furthest back layer. So when you look at this poster, you can see that the background is in a rectangle at the back. So I'm going to try to do that here. So there's several ways to create a mask. One is for me to click here, drag the size that I want the mask to be, and this tool here will put this into this mask layer. Voila! So here you can see that the black means that the photo is actually not showing, and the white means that the photo is showing. So when I move this, oops. Yeah, they move together like this. You can see that it's moving together, right? So what is interesting is right now, these two layers are linked. So you can see this link layer here, or click this once. The link disappears. This means that even though I move this, this won't move. So do you see how it's still in the frame? Which is very different from when it's linked. It moves together. So this is a useful tool to know. So what I want to show you next, so right now it looks a little bit big, so I'm going to press Command T for the size and shrink it a little bit. There you go. So what is next on this poster? So here's some shapes. So okay, to create shapes, it's really simple. You click on the shape tool. There's different types of shapes. So if you click, you can get to these other shapes. And if you look here, this is the color that it's going to show in. And of course, I don't want a red stroke, so what I'll do is cancel the stroke and put in a color. So one thing that I like eyedropper. So it's right here. And the reason I like to use this is because that means that there's some tone in the poster that I am eyedropping from. So say I want to eyedrop, let's try to get it. So look, yeah, I dropped this nice color here. So I want that to be my color of the circle. So there we go. So now it looks a bit more in sync with what the poster is. So maybe I'll choose something like this. I know I chose something a lot more bluer, but feel free to experiment with the color here. And yeah, it doesn't have to look exactly the same as long as you create all the assets that's on here. And the thing about Photoshop is you can also use Illustrator and bring in elements from Illustrator. And that's what I did with this line here. So let's go and open Illustrator. Once you have Illustrator open, click on Create New. It doesn't matter what artboard is, just create a new one. So the lines that I created for the poster, I just used the pen tool. Click, drag, and I don't want a fill color, so I turned that off. And I made it a little bit thicker, maybe 3 points, rounded caps. And what I use to duplicate objects on Illustrator is first, when I want to copy something, I press down the Option key. So every time I press down the Option key, I can always duplicate the object. However, when I'm here and I go click it down to create the object and I press Command D, it duplicates it exactly where I left off. Actually, right now I think there's a bit too much of a slant. So I'm gonna do it like this. Perfect. And I'm gonna change the color to white. Copy it and then paste it onto Photoshop. And I have options of bringing it in as a smart object or as a pixel. I'm going to show you the difference between the two right now. So if I bring it in as a smart object, I'll press OK, press Enter. Everything looks great. The object looks exactly how it should be. And say that I decide that I want to shrink it. And then I'm like, oh, this is way too small, so I decide to bring it back up to its normal size. And you can see that everything is still intact. But now let's try the other option. So I'm going to bring it in, paste it in as a pixel instead of a smart object this time. So Command V as a pixel. Press OK. Press down. Press Enter. And you can see that the difference here is when I bring it in as a smart object, there's a thing here that shows that it's a smart object. But when I bring it in as a pixel, this part is missing. So let's just turn off this so it's easier to see. So now what I'll do this time is I'll make it really small. And now I'm going to make it big again. You see how that changed? So now if I bring it in as a pixel, you can see that the integrity of the object is not preserved. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this and I just use this layer. So you can go back and forth between a pixel and a smart object. So in order to break the smart object, what I can do is I just use the eraser tool, and right now it says I can't edit it, but if I click it, it says the smart object must be rasterized before proceeding, and you just say OK, and you can see how it disappears. And say that I want to bring this back into a smart object. So I right click here, oops, and then I press Convert to Smart Object, and you can see that it converted into a smart object again. So I'm just going to use it as a pixel because this is the size that I want it. And if we go back to the original poster, you can see that my lines are a bit more swervy. So what I did was I actually used a filter called Liquify. So filter Liquify. And here you can see there's different tools that you can use. So I pretty much use this first one, and it's a little big, so I'm just gonna adjust the size like that. Or if I use the square brackets on the keyboard, I can go back and forth with the sizes really quickly. So maybe I want to design something like this. And I used a bit of this tool as well. This one kind of makes, oops, it's way too big. So it makes it look a little bit more big here. Bring it in. Yeah, so it's sort of like smudging the lines, if you see what I'm doing here. Press OK. There we go. And you can see that when you do that, there's this weird stroke that gets created around the lines. And in order to fill those in, what I can do is click the FX at the bottom here and go to Color Overlay, overlay it as white. Perfect. And those disappear. And now, what's next? So let me show you how to cut out this flower. So I'm going to turn it on. And there's many different ways to cut objects out. So I can click down here and use the lasso tool. Zoom in a bit. Go to the lasso tool again. And the lasso tool is very free, so I could kind of like move around anywhere that I want to cut it. This is one way. And if you press Option, do you see how there's a negative sign? Then it kind of gets rid of those. And then if you press, or gets rid of the selection, and if you press Shift, it adds the selection like that. So there's that option. And there's also the poly lasso tool, which is more angular, like that. And there's the magnetic lasso tool, which I think is actually the best one out of them all. And sometimes I use a mixture of this one and the poly lasso tool. So you can so even though I'm just running my mouse over the edges, and it's just picking up the edges by itself. So I could do that. Another way to do it is I could use this object selection tool right below. It's another tool, and what I can do is click and drag it to where I want the object to be selected. Oops. Oh, I see. So I wasn't on the flower layer, so let's do it here. So that's very quick, isn't it? So now it's selected the flower like that. Another way to do it is this quick selection tool. So as you can see, it all kind of leads to the same result. So it's up to you which one you use. So here, I have to click it twice. So I press Shift and I clicked it again here. So when you're here, let me use this. I think the fastest way to do it is to use the object selection tool. Oops. Like that. And I'm going to use the masking tool again, like this. Perfect. And bring the flower to where I want it. So if you look at the original poster, my flower is actually blue, and this one is pink. So what you can do to change the color is you use something called the adjustments panel, and this is going to be your best friend. There's a lot of different things you can do on here. You could do brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure, vibrance, hue and saturation, color balance. And there's all these other ones these ones I don't use as much, but I definitely use the top ones and these ones a lot. And for this example, what we'll use is the hue and saturation one. So when I click it, it goes right above the layer that you click it on. So right now, say that I want it really bright, saturated. And you can see that it affects all the layers that is below here. So all these things, the saturation is getting affected. And in order to just affect the saturation of this layer, what I do is you press Option. And when you do that between these two lines, you can see that this changes, right, into a square and an arrow. And if you click it, it just goes into here. So you can see how the saturation is affected. And what I'm going to do is click on this, Colorize. And when I click that, you can actually change the color of the flower. So I want to change it to a bluish tone, maybe bring up the saturation a bit. And that looks similar to what we have here. So this is great. Right now, the color is actually pretty nice for the background. And you can adjust the color of the background by going into Image, Auto Tone. It's too blue. Image, Contrast. So these are options, but they all kind of look different. So you can pick the one that looks the best to you. And auto or Image Auto Color. So depending on what you're going for, you can use these 3 tools, but I don't like any of them, so I'm just going to go back to the original, Command Z, and I'm going to use something called Vibrance. Click here. I just want it to affect this layer, so I'm going to go here, press Option, make sure this arrow comes up, and I'm going to bring up the Vibrance. It might be hard to see, but when I turn it on and off, you can see that there's certain tones that get brought out, and I like that. And it's different than saturation. It's actually a bit more natural when you use the Vibrance one. So I'm going to keep it like this. So let's cut out the ginkgo leaves. Here. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So I'll use, so since 2 of the leaves are in one, I'm going to just duplicate it. So did you see how I did that? You can go copy, Command C, and then paste. That's one option. But sometimes I just click and drag it to the plus sign down here, and it duplicates it really quickly. And it duplicates it right on the top. So I just have to move it if I don't see it. And I'm going to use this tool, the Object Selection tool. Oops. Oh, I'm not on the right layer. Just make sure you're on the right layer. Perfect. And I know that this isn't done properly. You can see a bit of the blue. I'll show you how to fix that in a second. Just make sure you're on the right layer. Yeah, even here. So what I can do is I can zoom in and use a different tool like the poly lasso tool. Press Shift, click, click, click. I picked up a little bit of the blue, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then click here. And on this example, I'm going to go back, zoom in, and I'm going to, you can see here that I said with the last example that the black means that it is covered. So you can actually go in here and paint. So I'm going to go to the brush tool, which is here. Make sure that I have a hard edge brush, not the soft edge, but depends on what you're going for. But for this example, I should have a hard edge brush, and press the left square bracket so it's a bit smaller, and just brush in black. So you see how that. So when you do this, just make sure that you have this layer selected. This is very important. So well, right now this is a smart object, but if I rasterized it and started doing it here, oops. So for instance, if I started painting here, like it's actually painting on this layer, and you need to make sure you're painting on this layer. So that's just something to look out for. So when I'm here, I can just adjust. So the keyboard shortcut to turning this objects is Command T. Yeah, or maybe I want it this way. Perfect. And lastly, it's the girl. So what I used to trace out the girl is, so when you cut objects out, actually the best tool to use is the pen tool. I haven't shown you that yet. It's the one down here. Just click on the first one, and you can really get into details by using the pen tool. So you have to like really outline whatever you're cutting out. So this is the best way. So if you're printing something really big, if you use the other tools that I just showed you, you might get some weird edges, and this actually helps you a lot from that happening. So let's just... So what I'm pressing down is the space bar to make sure that I can move around the page. See, and it turns into a hand. And sometimes like the lines form like this, and in order to break that knot, you can see it kind of turns to a minus here. So when you get there, press Option, and that gets broken. So you can start a new segment. So we're almost there. Oh, so one important thing to note is when you're using this pen tool as a tool to cut out an object like I am now, make sure it's on the path selection, because you'll see why in a second. So now I completed my path around her. And if you go to paths on the layers panel here, you can see that I created this. So when I go here and I press Command, the path turns into this like squiggly line. So this means that it's selected. So when I go back onto her layer and press this mask tool again, oops, oh, this is important. So I know that right now it actually selected this to this layer, but what I need is obviously this girl. So when I press that, it actually cut her out. So in order to reverse the selection, the keyboard shortcut is Command Shift I. Do you see how that changed? Command Shift I. Command Shift I. Yeah, right there. So when I do this, you click that down. So another way to do that would be to go to Select and then go to Inverse. So it's Shift Command I. Inverse. Select Inverse. And now it's the right one. And then press this. Perfect. And now you're probably like, okay, what about this part? So what I can do is I can click on another path layer here and do what I just did with the pen tool again. Yeah, hair is a little bit tricky. There we go. Go back to the paths, Command, click this layer. I'm going to zoom out to see what I've selected. So now it's selected the wrong thing again. So Command Shift I. And here what I'll do is I'm going to color in this layer black. And I'm not sure if you know, but if you click here, it goes to black and white. And what if I do Command Delete, the back color of here goes in. Option Delete, the front color of the this goes in. But what I want is obviously this to be gone, like that. And now she's a little small, so I'm gonna zoom out, Command T. Perfect. What else? So maybe I want the flower to be in front. And remember we put the hue and saturation to only affect this. So if I want to move the flower, I have to move both of these layers. So I'm going to press Shift, click on both, and drag it up. Yeah. Maybe like there. Maybe move the girl down a little. Perfect. And last but not least, the text. So here you can just use whatever font you want to use. And I think everyone probably knows how to type on a straight path, right? So I'm just going to show you how to type on a curve like this. So how you do that is, first I need to make a shape. Make this shape. Just so you can see it better, I'm going to turn off the fill and turn on the stroke. And here, go to the pen tool and click it here at the edge. So some lorem ipsum text got in there, but I'm going to delete it and type in what I want. So when I did that, it actually created a new layer. Do you see that? So let me just click off of it for a sec and then delete that shape layer. Maybe I want it a little bit this way. So I'm going to click here and you can see where you're typing. Oops. So I'm just going to put some spaces. Perfect. Yeah, I think that's all I need to show you to create this poster. And so I want you to experiment with some stuff. Maybe you could try checking out the levels, for instance. If I click levels, make sure I just want to apply it to her. And you can see how that changes the color of the photo here. Yeah, play around with the adjustments layer and see what it does. I think that's the best way to see for yourself. So actually for me, she looks a little green. So another way to fix that is if I click on the color balance tool, you can kind of shift the tones that she's in. So I remember I actually changed her a little bit. She looks a little bit more red than here. She looks a little green. So obviously if I went more green, she'll look more green and I don't want that. I'm just gonna make sure it's on here. So maybe make her a little bit more on the redder tones. Yeah, that for me that looks better. So if I turn this off, you can see how it adjusts her tone slightly warmer. So that's it for this tutorial. And yeah, if I want to type straight, that's all you have to do. Click the T and then click wherever you want to type. Here's a quick recap of today's class. When you're designing for web, remember to use 72 pixels versus print when you should use 300 pixels. A quick way to color correct is by going under Image on the menu bar, and you can select Auto Tone, Auto Contrast, or Auto Color. And this may not yield in the best results, but if you're batch editing a ton of photos, it may look consistent if you use the same tone here. And remember the difference between a smart object versus a pixel. Smart objects preserve the integrity of the object, but pixels do not. And lastly, the adjustments panel is your friend. You can manipulate all colors and tones of any image here. So for the homework, it's for you to recreate the poster, and it doesn't have to look exactly the same, but all the elements in it should be there still. And I'll give them all to you on the assignments page, so just watch out for that. And for the font, you can use any font of your choice. Let me know if you have any questions.